If we asked a 3-year-old, they probably would say,
Uh,
I told you that last time.
Welcome to Southwest Manuscripters and Surf Writers combined. What is March meeting? This is March 6, 2021. I'm Jerry Fonte. I'm the program director for Southwest Manuscripters. And our guest speaker today is Doug Shepherdson. And Doug, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself and
Sure.
your first interest in writing, and just take it away, Doug.
Okay, well, first, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. So, let me just talk about myself a little bit. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for letting me talk about myself in writing. So, where to start? Okay, when did I start having an interest in writing? I've always had an interest in writing. I would write down things from time to time. I've never thought of myself as an especially gifted writer, but from time to time in my life, I would write down observations, thoughts, feelings, I guess things you'd put in a diary. That interest in writing perhaps came from reading, because reading and writing go together. And I've always liked reading, and I'm often reading 2 or 3 books at a time. And by the way, feel free to interrupt while I'm just chatting away here. If you have any questions like, what the hell is he talking about? Feel free to ask, and I can stop and try to answer. But anyway, I like to read. And this may have come in part from living in Karachi, Pakistan when I was a kid for 3 years. We had no TV, no radio. Of course, internet had not been invented. Al Gore had not invented the internet yet then. So all we had were our books and imagination. So I really liked reading, for example, the whole series of the Hardy Boy books. I don't know if you remember Hardy Boy, comic books, Rupert the Bear. I don't know if any of you know the British childhood character, Rupert the Bear.
Rupert, yeah, I do.
But he was always one of my favorite heroes, Rupert the Bear. And the first book, if you want to know, the first book that I can remember being read to me that I enjoyed and that I forced my mother to read to me at gunpoint many, many times, and still like today, Mike Mulligan and his Steam Shovel.
Oh, yeah.
By Virginia Lee Burton. She wrote and illustrated it in 1939, still in publication today. Favorite writer, do I have a favorite writer? Well, I like reading short stories. And for example, I've really come to enjoy the fiction of Louis L'Amour, especially his adventure stories. He's famous for his cowboy stories, but the guy wrote like over 100 novels and short stories, just incredibly prolific. I feel happy to write one thing. In college, I guess my favorite writer would have been Leonard Cohen, the Canadian folk singer. But my most favorite writer as a boy and as a teenager, even now I appreciate his work greatly, would be Ray Bradbury.
Oh,
I probably read and reread Ray Bradbury more than anybody else. And we'll talk more about him in a little bit. But after college, I worked for 4 or 5 years in the advertising business, writing print ads, radio ads, some TV ads, doing some creative writing here and there, as well as artists, rough sketch, for layouts for print ads. So there's a little bit of artistic element there too. And after that, I decided I needed to pursue a career that paid more and had more benefits. So I moved to LA and got a job with an aerospace company while still trying to write creatively on the side from time to time. And in aerospace, I was a contract manager, which means you're the day-to-day contact point for customers, holding their hand when there's a problem, writing business letters, negotiating terms and conditions, and oftentimes writing the first draft of these contracts between aerospace companies, which would then be reviewed and modified by the legal department. So we were like cheap attorneys. We weren't lawyers, but we did a lot of the drafting of the fine boilerplate that goes into these big contracts. Well, during the 3 decades in aerospace, I was fortunate enough to travel internationally because I asked for international customers and they gave me international customers. And that gave me the opportunity to travel and go to places and see people and experience other cultures that I might not have experienced. And when I would get home from these business trips, I would write these I would jot down notes while I was there because I recognized I was in a unique position in my family. Nobody had ever traveled like that before. And so I could write these things down, and I would bring these notes home and make them into like a trip letter that I would send off to family and friends. And of course, that was in the days when people wrote letters, and especially the Christmas letters. Remember the Christmas letters? When you'd write at the end of the year and what your family had been doing. And, you know, little Jimmy drove the car. He was drunk. He drove it through the front window of the old folks' home. But other than that, we had a great year. And you would swap these Christmas letters. But creative writing during that time, I wrote 5 or 6 short stories, sent them off to various publications and contests. Of course, nobody liked any of them, didn't get one that I liked. But I did have one minor creative writing success that I would like to share with you back in, well, maybe 1997, I guess it was. My son David was 6. He loved ice hockey. And one day I saw he was drawing these pictures of little hockey pucks with little people on them. And they look like heads on a hockey puck. And so right away in my mind, like a light bulb went off, and I thought, puck heads, those are puck heads. So next few weeks off and on, I developed a family of puckhead characters where they had personalities, and I made up some cartoons. I set up a Puckheads website, and most important, I copyrighted and trademarked the name Puckheads for cartoons, animation, and toys. And I sent off my Puckheads cartoons to various newspapers and syndicates because that was back in the day. Even though the internet was coming on, people still read newspapers, you may remember. There was still a cartoon section in the back with the
Remember that?
remember that? Comics in the back of the paper. And they had cartoon pages, but of course, nobody was interested in Puckheads. Oh, here, look, I have one here, a couple here. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see that.
Those are adorable, actually. Oh my gosh.
So this is a Punkster and Spinner and Lightning. The main character was Spinner, and he had his friends. And, you know, love is naming your pet rat after your secret girlfriend. You know, so I developed a bunch of these. Here's Spinner and Punkster.
Those are really nice. I really
Well, thanks.
appreciate
So
and enjoy those.
anyway, about a year later, I was contacted by this lady lawyer from New York City, and she said, she wanted to meet for lunch. So we met for lunch, and she said, I'm representing a major toy company, and they're developing a possible toy. And in doing the research, it turns out the toy that they wanted to develop was called a Puckhead. And it turns out you own the copyright and trademark to the word Puckheads in relation to toys. And would I be willing to sell the rights and all my characters to them? And so we negotiated a little bit, and that's what I did. I ended up selling my rights to my Puckheads characters to a toy company for, well, it was a pretty substantial sum. It was $50,000. And they never did develop the toys for some reason, but I learned a lesson. If you do something creative, copyright it and trademark it. So you own it.
How long ago was that, Doug? How long ago?
1997 or so.
Oh, okay. Well, you never know. A lot of things are resurrected. At least they don't have to wait for you to die to get the rights.
So that was a minor success, or a good success, in that my Puckheads characters were bought by a toy company. So back then, later on, about 2009, 2010, I was hanging out from time to time at this coffee shop in Redondo Beach where they're doing poetry readings. And I met some interesting people. I stood up once or twice and read some poems. I joined the local surf writers group, and they produced this book, the writing game. A very nice anthology of prose and poetry put together by Casey. And I think Marilyn Litvak, I think, is in here also. I don't know if you've probably seen this. But I met like this older lady, Wanda Van Hoy Smith. I don't remember, anybody remembers Wanda? but she was a poet living in Hermosa Beach, and I helped her organize and publish some of her poems. She had a lot of chapbooks, like these little informal books, a lot of scraps of paper here and there, and I helped her put together her poems in a couple of books. And the painting on the cover, by the way, is by my wife, Winnie, who paints. And so I helped her do that. I think Wanda passed away in 2018. Anyway, this is one.
I know her.
So I mentioned that one of my favorite writers was Ray Bradbury. And turns out he'd been a friend of Wanda's back in the 1950s. They used to drink beer together down in Hermosa Beach. And that was 2011. I was corresponding with this, a nonprofit group called the SS United States Conservancy, who were trying to save this old ocean liner, the SS United States. In fact, they're still trying to do that, turn it into a hotel. And it turns out Ray Bradbury had traveled several times on the SS United States. And so the Conservancy said, hey, we'd like to get Ray Bradbury on board as an honorary member of our organization. And I said, well, he kind of lives down here in the LA area, and maybe I could go meet him and talk to him. So I arranged for me and Wanda to visit Ray Bradbury, who was one of my favorite writers of my whole lifetime. And so it was a great thrill for me to be able to do that. And so I think that was in early 2012. He was bedridden. I did not get him to commit to allowing him to use his name and image for the SS United States Conservancy. But it was a wonderful afternoon for me because I enjoyed just listening to him and Wanda reminisce about the old days about drinking beer down in Hermosa Beach. So that was nice. More recently, I've written 3 things, which I guess you could call complete or published. 2 small books and a screenplay. So very briefly here, because I may be rambling on here. So the first one is, again, I guess you can see this. It's a book called Love in the Times of Occupation. Can you see that? I guess.
Yes.
Okay, so my wife is a young woman whose family heritage was from Hong Kong. And when I would ask her what life was like when she was growing up in Hong Kong, she would say, oh, we had a big house, but we lost it to the communists. Or life was a little tough under the Japanese invasion. And I knew there had to be more than that. So back around 2013 or so, I asked her to tell me more. And she eventually gave me 30 pages of her thoughts. It was written in Chinese characters, which I could not read. So I had it translated into English, and it contained a lot of her impressions and feelings that she hadn't shared. And even though it was just like an outline, a very thin outline of 30 pages, I thought it was a remarkable story, a moving story. And so I took her words and I added to them, and I added some color, and I wove in some of the larger historical events. And so it became this book, which became 147 pages and available on Amazon. But anyway, I thought it was a remarkable story of how she survived both the nightmare of the Japanese cruelty of they took over, China and Hong Kong during World War II, and thousands of people died. And then right after that, the communists took over, and there was more hell to pay. So I felt honored to be able to put her story into a book. More recently, last year, when I was cleaning out some boxes of old papers and photos and 35mm slides, I was trying to decide what to keep and what to throw away. And I realized that very little in writing or artwork or whatever had survived from my parents. Yeah, I remember some of the anecdotes they told me about when they were growing up, but really, very, very little existed in writing from my parents about their life. Nothing existed. And they were gone, and their lives were gone. And so I decided that I did not want that to happen to me and my children, assuming that someday my children would have an interest in my life. They might wonder about my life someday. So I took some of my old writings, and one of those trip letters that I mentioned, this one was a trip to China, business trip to China, and some other things. And I added in some history here and there, and the genealogy of the Shepherdson family, how we came into America, blended it in here and there, and some other things, the story of romance, my thoughts on the meaning of life. And I put it all together in a little book called Life in My Time and Other Writings. Also available on Amazon, in case you're interested. Makes a wonderful.
Yes, and Doug, later, if you have passages that you can read from some of them, and whenever if you might want to include that, feel free to.
Oh, well, if you wouldn't be too bored, I might have
No,
some.
because we've
But,
got plenty of time. It'd be great to hear.
okay.
Uh-huh.
Well, the last thing I wanted to mention was my screenplay. Where is it? Here it is. There it is. It's called God Willing, my one and only screenplay. So the story on this is 5 or 6 years ago, I wrote this screenplay, and the story in one single sentence is there's an American man on a business trip to exotic Dubai, where he falls into a passionate but doomed love affair with an exotic woman from the East on the eve of the 2003 Iraq War. So my first draft was 147 pages, and I had got a couple of those screenplay writing books. They said, oh, you don't want to go over 120 pages. So I knew 147 pages was too long, but I thought, God, this thing is perfect. How the hell can I ever cut 27 pages? I like it as it is. But I struggled, and I managed to cut it down to 127 pages. And I sent it off to a couple of screenplay contests, and it became a quarterfinalist in the Blue Cat screenplay contest, one of them. So that meant it was in the top 100 out of 2,441 entries. And that honor and $2.65 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. You know, it was a little honor, but not much of an honor. But
How long ago was that? I'm sorry, Doug.
2011 or so.
Okay.
So I know then, and I know now, the odds are about 1 in 10,000 of ever seeing a screenplay purchased and made into a movie. But I was hoping that somebody would like it enough to option it, and for a fee like $1,000 or $5,000 or whatever. But I did get an agent at a mid-sized Beverly Hills agency to give me a meeting to let me pitch the script to them. So I'll tell you about that. But first, let me tell you about the process of how I wrote this, because I thought that was kind of interesting. As I mentioned, I was fortunate enough to travel on business for this aerospace company called Boeing. And over 3 years, I took 5 or 6 trips to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And I recognized, again, that this was something special, that I was doing something that not many people had the chance to do. So every time I went over there, I'd write down little things I observed, or I'd take those little pads of paper, you know, the hotel room, you write things on that, and I'd put them all in a folder. I'd go to the bars late at night, and the girls would tell me all these sad stories, and I'd write down stuff on a bar napkin, and I'd put it in the folder. So I had all these little scraps of paper with things written on them that people had shared with me or that I had observed. And so then on one of my last trips coming back from Dubai, I was on KLM, and fortunate, you know, the company would send us business class. So I was on the upper deck of the Boeing 747, which you're not going to get to experience anymore, but because they're phasing those out. But there's nothing like traveling on the upper deck of a 747 at company expense, of course. And so I was having a drink, and I was looking through my little folder of notes, and I thought, you know, I could make a story out of this stuff. And so I went to the stairs. There's these stairs that go from the upper deck to the main cabin deck, which is where you usually are. And I was sitting on the top of the stairs, and I put my little pieces of paper, and I was spreading them down the stairs, and I was rearranging them because, you know, it was all on paper, scraps of paper. And I thought, well, this could go here, and this could go here. And does this belong here? And for example, there's one point in the story where the main character goes to meet his counterpart at an electronics store, and there's these little Indian kids playing with toys in front of the store. I thought, well, where does that go? Could I put it here? Could I put it there? So I was arranging the scraps of paper into some sort of narrative that I thought could make a novel. I thought, I'll write a novel. And then I thought, I've written some short stories now and then, and nobody likes them. So why don't I try writing a movie script? So I thought, okay, that's what I will do. I will make this into a screenplay. And so that's how I came up with my first and one and only screenplay. Um, God Willing, it's called. So, the pitch meeting at the talent agency. So I had an old friend from college who, he's a director. He gets, it's a tough business, the movie business, but from time to time he gets work fairly steadily as directing TV specials. And so he set me up with an agent at his agency. And so I took my script in. He got the door open for me. And because nobody in Hollywood is interested in you or what you're writing unless you know somebody. So I got a call from this woman, and she said, come on in, I want to discuss your screenplay. So I was very excited because here I am. I'm going to a Beverly Hills talent agency to discuss my screenplay. And so I go into this little meeting room, and she's sitting on the other side of this desk, and she has my screenplay in front of her. And she says, wow, this is well written. Good characters, forbidden romance, an exotic Middle East location. It reminds me very much of The English Patient. So I'm thinking, wow, she's comparing my script to The English Patient. The English Patient, that was Best Picture of the Year in 1995, 1996, Ralph Fiennes. Remember that movie? I don't know. But she's comparing to The English Patient. And then I'll never forget, because this is one of these things, certain things are etched in your memory that you never forget. Out of the hundreds of things you experience in your life, you always, you remember one or two of them. So I'm thinking, wow, she's comparing this to The English Patient. So then I'll never forget, she picks up my script and she kind of tosses it back across the desk at me. And she says, no one in Hollywood is going to be interested in doing a remake of The English Patient. Trust me. I said, why? And she said, nobody wants to do a remake of The English Patient. Forget it. It's not what people are interested in right now. Do you have anything else? How about Dukes of Hazzard? I know somebody who's looking for something along the lines of the Dukes of Hazzard. They want to do a remake of the Dukes of Hazzard. Do you have anything like that? I said, no. She said, well, I guess we're done. So she stood up and I stood up. And that was my meeting. And then we were walking to the door of the meeting room. And then she turned to me and she said, oh, by the way, your screenplay has a problem. I said, really? She said, yes, it's too sympathetic to the Arabs. I said, what are you talking about? The Arab characters in here are depicted as they're slave drivers. They import these poor Muslim brothers from Pakistan to do all the hard labor. And the Arabs in Dubai are literally slave drivers. I'm not sympathetic to them at all. And she says, no, your screenplay is too sympathetic to the Arabs, and like it or not, the Jews still run Hollywood. And nobody is going to touch anything that is sympathetic to the Arabs. Maybe you'll have better luck with Canada. Good luck. That was the end of my pitch for my screenplay. One of those things you never forget. So anyway, last year I dug it out and I rewrote bits and pieces, and I said, hey, this really isn't that bad. And I cut it down to 120 pages, and I sent it off to a couple of more contests, and one of the screenplay contests called Nostos, they liked it. And recently I was honored to be one of 7 finalists to be invited to their screenplay retreat in Italy as one of the scripts that will be reviewed and discussed. So I did receive some recognition from them. And so that's it.
Do you have, oh my gosh. Well, first off, I love The English Patient. I don't think we need more of that genre. This is so, and I think your screenplay was maybe just a little before its time.
Maybe.
Because no, seriously, because now with diversity and everything, we've become much more, sympathetic to the opposite, whatever political propaganda, trove. So yes. So that's, wow, you've had quite an eclectic background and writing experience. First off, what were you doing in Pakistan? You say you grew up there?
Well, that was back in the days. when Pakistan was, they split up India. There used to be just India was part of the British Empire, and they split it into Hindu India and Muslim Pakistan. And so it was a fairly young nation, and there was all kinds of aid programs going on. And so my dad was in the health, education, welfare department of the government, and so a whole bunch of Americans went over there, and for many projects, and for this particular project was to teach them how to pasteurize milk and distribute milk and how to have better dairy farming. So it was a milk improved milk production program. So he was one of the team that went over there, and so he took the whole family, and we were all over there in Pakistan.
How long
The
were
whole
you there?
almost 3 years.
Oh my gosh. So what age were you? This was when
Like
you were,
8, 9, 10.
okay, so still at like an elementary school
Yeah.
level, but what an impressionable and very aware age to
Yeah.
be in a culture like that, because other than Africa, I can't think of a much kind of more, oh, what do you want to say, developing or contrast to also American possibly culture and all.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So good
Yeah.
for you. How did that fit into with, like, was that a time when like India was also separating from England and the whole Gandhi situation? Because I know in the movie Gandhi, that's what I've seen most about, that
It
split
was it
between.
was right after that, because the split came in 1948, and this was in like 1955, 57, 58.
Okay.
And so it was fairly recent after that. But
Wow.
Pakistan was still, most of the bureaucracy was still following the British traditions. And Karachi, then the main city, it was a very peaceful, open, tolerant city of maybe 500,000 people. Now it's like another one of these hellholes of 12 million people, and they're not tolerant with tremendous crime problems. But it was kind of enjoyable then to experience a different culture.
Absolutely. I can't think of a better thing also, especially for young people, to be introduced to different cultures, different ways of life and ways of thinking and languages and
And the
all that.
school system, it was called the KAS, Karachi American School, was actually a British-run school with a British curriculum. So we had the Greek classics in the third grade in condensed version, and there was a lot of reading. And like I said, there's no TV and no radio, so there was a lot of reading, which I think was good.
What an amazing opportunity. And I bet ever since then, you've always been attuned to whatever's been happening in that neck of the woods, huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's more than anything. I think it's great to study history, geology, or whatever, go and live there, and then go back and restudy it. So it makes a whole different slant, puts a whole different slant on it. But that is great. So that's something else you could write about too. I don't know if you had mentioned in your, so was that in your first, in your book about, yeah, your life experiences, is that?
Yes, in the
Uh-huh. I tell you what, why don't you pick, can you in some way pick something out of that to maybe read to us a little?
sure, do you have time for
We
like a
do.
5
We've got
minutes?
plenty of time. We've got till 4 o'clock, and it's 20 till
Okay.
3. So
Nobody's bored yet? Nobody's falling
nobody's bored. They're still on board. So
Okay, so yeah,
yeah.
here, let me just, one little thing here, I'll just put it on the screen here, easier to read. Okay. Okay, Camp Sunshine. It's late at night, and I'm sitting on the sofa looking through a box of old photographs, pictures of a family from another time and another place, the time when we were young and full of life. A car passes by outside, and here now I'm looking at a very faded image of a family, my family, standing beside our old car, a baby blue Pontiac. Those were the days when the family car did not have air conditioning. The freeways of today were still under construction, and the drive to the lake was long and hot, even with the windows rolled down. But we didn't care, because when we arrived at the lake, when we were close to arriving at the lake, there was such a feeling of excitement. The tires rolled off the 2-lane blacktop and down a dusty gravel road, under the scintillating shade of the trees that crowded the sides of the twisting path that took us down to Camp Sunshine. And then we were there. There it was, the silver blue green water of the lake. Lake Mattawa, Western Massachusetts, and a small lakefront house that was Camp Sunshine. Camp Sunshine. You couldn't help but smile at the name because you knew you were away from the routines of school and day-to-day life. You could kick off your shoes, skip through the thick green grass and listen to the sound of the lapping waters while Grandma invited you in with a hug at the door and the scent of fresh baked chocolate chip cookies. Yeah, sunshine. Summertime at the lake. Pictures of a family from long ago. The hours then were filled with swimming and fishing. And on some afternoons, Grandma would lead us through the woods on the soft pine needle path to a special place where we could pick wild blueberries. At night, we would fall asleep to the voices of the frogs going jug-a-rum, jug-a-rum, jug-a-rum. Was there ever a better way to fall asleep? And in the morning, we would awaken and descend the narrow wooden stairs to find Grandpa making fire in the fireplace with the sweet smell of the burning newspapers that he always used to get the flames going. And then breakfast, homemade donuts every day and scrambled eggs. All those wonderful meals that Grandma made for so many people 3 times a day. How did she find the time to do it? And kids, well, what we would do, we would swim and splash in the water and then rest and swim some more and rest and swim some more. And then there were those days after swimming when we'd all sit on the screened-in porch that extended out over the lakefront and wait for the rains to come. We'd watch the sky grow dark and the rain and the lightning and the darkness would pass over the water coming towards us. And we would all sit in reverent silence and listen to the sound of the rain reverberate on the roof with the sound of 1,000 tin drums. Jug-a-rum, the frogs would sing at night. How long will you stay? But whether it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4, it was never enough. All too soon, we had to say goodbye to Camp Sunshine and wait for the months of school to pass again, wait for next year and another summer to come, a summer of endless swimming and walks in the forest to find wild blueberries. And now the years have passed. I'm older. We're no longer young. And as I look through the box of old pictures, a car passes by outside. For a moment, there is silence, and then the winter rain starts, a cold, hissing rain. I close my eyes, and for a moment, I remember and relive those days of peaceful summer rains of Camp Sunshine at the lake, those days of long afternoon swims, the cups of hot chocolate with marshmallows on top. Outside, the wind shakes the trees. I turn out the light and close the box of memories and head for the bedroom. And for a moment, I can almost imagine I can hear the love songs of the frogs at Camp Sunshine before I fall asleep. Jug-a-rum, jug-a-rum, jug-a-rum.
That is beautiful. It's so obviously poetic, very lyrical.
Would you
My
like to-
grandmother used to have a cabin in the Lake of the Ozarks, and it's very reminiscent of that for me too. Very nostalgic. That was beautiful.
Thank you. I'm done.
No, you're not. Do you have other things to read? We've got time still, and if anybody else wants to jump in with questions or comments or whatever,
Yeah, please, free. Yeah,
please.
free to.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like some questions. I have a question. Did you participate in the library anthology?
Recently, you mean?
Yes.
No.
Are you living in Texas or here?
I used to live in LA and Torrance, and then 3 years ago now, coming up, I retired, and we did a lot of research and said, where can we live that's nice but cheaper than LA, despite the crazy political leaders? And we settled here in Sugar Land, Texas, which is a suburb of Houston. It's very much like Torrance is to downtown LA. It's like the Torrance of Houston, called Sugar Land.
Oh, okay. How did you do during the electrical and weather problems recently?
We survived. You want me to talk about that for a minute? I could.
I would be interested.
So, a sentence that comes to mind, to go back to my days in aerospace, I'll tell you where this sentence comes from. So back in the days of aerospace, the Garrett Company in Torrance, which is now Honeywell Aerospace, we had a sister division in Phoenix. Just rambling on here for a minute. And we would fly over to Phoenix from time to time for a business meeting. And so if you were an executive, we had a corporate jet. It's called the Falcon 20, if you want to look up what a nice corporate jet is. And then there was also for the worker bees at the worker level like me, they had this propeller plane airplane. It's called the Swearingen Metroliner. It was like a flying tin can, very slow with propellers, and it was hell to ride in. But you know, that you weren't an executive, you're not supposed to go in the jet. But if there was an empty seat on the jet, you could hitch a ride on the jet. So, and I'll tell you right now, if you ever feel like you need psychotherapy or you ever feel depressed, take a ride on an executive jet. You'll feel terrific. There was nothing like flying on a business jet. Well, anyway, so one day I got a ride over on the Falcon jet and felt great. And I went to this meeting. Then coming back, I was on the little propeller plane, the Metroliner. And as we were coming to land at LAX, a jet had landed close before us, and we hit the turbulence, the wake turbulence from this jet in front of us. And all of a sudden, we're just like a couple hundred feet off the runway, we started shaking and dipping very violently, and the pilot managed to straighten out the wings, and we slammed out of the runway, and we bounced, and we slammed down again. And as we're going down the runway, I remember because this was one of these little commuter planes, the co-pilot turned to the pilot and he said, "Damn, I hope I never have to go through that again." And that was sort of the sentence that came to mind when we had the ice storm, you know, a couple of weeks ago here in Texas. Damn, I hope I never have to go through that again. Because they're just not set up here for cold weather. It was like 15 degrees here for almost 2 days straight with 20-mile-an-hour winds. Further north, like up in Dallas near Oklahoma, it was like 5 degrees or 7 degrees, 6 inches of snow, everything coated with ice. And we lost power. We had no power, no electricity, no internet, no communication with the outside world. And for 3 days, we were huddled in front of the fireplace in blankets trying to keep warm, hoping the food in the refrigerator didn't go bad before it ran out. And we were fortunate we didn't have any pipe burst or anything. But a lot of the homes here were not set up for, the pipes are not insulated in the ceilings, and they froze and they burst. And then when they thawed out, all the water came down, and thousands of people had, you know, the furniture and carpet and flooring destroyed from the water leaks from the bursting pipes. And they're still fixing them. But so it was 3 days of cold and darkness at night, like the old days, just we camped in front of the fireplace. But the worst part was there was no communication with the outside world. And, you know, we didn't know when it was going to end. There was no communication with the power company. So we didn't know whether it would last for 2 days or 3 days or 10 days. But fortunately, after 3 days, the power came back on and we were okay.
Oh, wow. You've exhausted us just listening to that. We're all huddled up here, and how I think we're having a little warm spell right now. I guess it finally has gotten up into the 70s almost. But yes, my brother and sister-in-law live. One of my brothers and sister-in-laws live. They relocated she works for Toyota. So she relocated from Torrance here to McKinney outside of Dallas.
Oh, okay.
And the same thing, water coming down. They have like a 3-story mansion for a fraction of the cost it, you know, would cost here. And my brother was saying that apparently Texas is one of the few states that they can allow water heaters or something in the attic, so that if people's water heaters ruptured, they would start, you know, just from the attic down. And they've had, you know, so much damage also. So thank goodness you didn't have pipes busting and freezing.
Yeah, we were lucky. Yeah, a lot of people were very, very unlucky.
Yes,
So.
Yes.
And then our leadership, Ted Cruz, flew off to Mexico.
Oh,
For his daughters, yes. You mentioned about working for Boeing, and I have to say, way, way, way back, many moons ago, it started out as a stewardess with American. Then we transitioned into becoming flight attendants. And I was actually part of the crew, the evacuation, FAA evacuation test done on the 747.
Really?
And it failed the first test. The slides didn't inflate fully. In fact, I almost broke my leg going down one. And they gave me the option. I could go home to my base in LA, or I could stick around in Dallas and watch the second day and the second test done, where they had to recruit another 300 people to pretend to be passengers. And so I remember on crutches there at the base of the aircraft when the lights go down, and all of a sudden it was like this, ready, action, or whatever. And it did pass, I think, within, I think you have 90 seconds or something to get all the people. Anyway, so when you mentioned Boeing, I was thinking, I love that plane. I love the 747. That was my baby.
Yeah, it's a good airplane. Yeah, but they're phasing them all out now for the twin engine for the 777.
Oh, still with the load capacity and all. I had.
Well, almost, but it's not worth to fly the 4 engines anymore, because of, every time you have to do overhaul on the engines, it's 4 instead of 2, and it's
Wow.
another $2 million and just save
Right.
little maintenance just because of 2 engines instead of 4.
Right. Wow. But good for you. It sounded like Boeing was a good company, basically. So,
Yeah.
and other places that you traveled. What are some of the other exotic or most interesting that you've traveled?
I went to Japan, I think 3 times, and Korea 5 times. I went to Israel twice, which was interesting.
Can you share some of that? Yeah, what do you went just twice for business related or what?
The first time was, this goes back a number of years, and you may or may not remember, and you may not have any interest in aerospace, but Israel they wanted to develop their own fighter for their own air force, and they called it what do they call it? The Kiefer or something. But they were trying to develop their own jet fighter. And we at Garrett, we nobody makes all of it, just like a car, nobody makes all of the bits and pieces that go into it. You buy them from vendors. So Garrett was making the air conditioning system for this, what was it called? The Levi. I don't remember the Levi fighter, but so we were making the air conditioning system for the Levi, and so we had to negotiate the contract terms and conditions for the Israel Aircraft Industries, IAI, to purchase the fighter's aircraft air conditioning system. And so my first experience with people from Israel, who, as it turns out, most of them at that time were from Russia or Romania or Poland. And so it was dealing mostly with Russian people who had immigrated to Israel. But we flew to New York first for some yelling and screaming from their negotiators for the first round of negotiations. Then we had to fly over to Israel. We wanted them to come to Torrance, by the way, and they said, no, you've got to come to Israel. And my boss, one of the things I remember is my boss said, no, tell them we're not coming to Israel. And they've got to come over here to negotiate. And the next day, I got a call in from me and my boss, who said, no, we're not going to Israel. Got a call in from the president of the company, be like the president of Boeing or the president of, like, way high up of a major company. And he called us into these, the executive office with the wood paneling and the thick carpeting. And he said to my boss, I understand you've been invited to negotiate with IAI. And my boss said, yes. He said, but we can't afford the expense in the budget to go over there. And so the president said, well, IAI, that's Israel Aircraft Industries. With a name like that, where do you think they're located? And my boss said, Israel? That's right. And are they a customer? Yeah. Well, when a customer says come to a meeting and they're in Israel, where do you think you and Doug are going to go? Israel? That's right. Get your ass out of here and get on a plane. So we went off to Israel for the second round of negotiations. And we did get the contract. But one of the things that I remember is their lead negotiator from their side was a guy named Shraga Bar Nissan, who was a big square-headed Russian Israeli person who he'd been a tank commander in the Israeli army. And he would be like, he was a real character. He'd be in a movie if he was still alive. But He was the type of guy that could, if he couldn't out-talk you, he could outshoot you or club you to death. But there was nothing that was going to stand in his way to getting something done. And he was their chief negotiator. And a couple years after that, you may remember there was an Ethiopian airliner 767 that was hijacked and crashed in the Mediterranean off the coast of Ethiopia, where half the people got killed when they were crashing into the ocean. And he was one of the people on the plane. He was on a business trip to Ethiopia. And Shraga Bar Nisan, the tough Israeli who could outshoot or outtalk his way out of anything, died in the plane crash.
Wow. So what years were these? I'm trying to figure out between what wars or what. I spent a summer in Israel working and living on a kibbutz, and have been back there a few times since then, and can also very much relate to the history and hijacking. In fact, I left Israel after my stint working on the kibbutz right before the Yom Kippur War. And,
Let me just check.
see, that would have been, for me, it was 1973. And then again, you know, the hijackings, again being related to the airline industry, and with the hijackings taking place mostly throughout the 70s, which is also when I first started flying, I remember being able to walk on board an aircraft, and even passengers could have their family members and everything. It was during that time I was flying where they had to instigate all those security measures because of the hijackings.
Yeah, this was Ethiopian Airlines hijack, 1979.
See, okay, so still towards maybe the more end of the hijacking, the season of hijackings.
Yeah.
So there's other, I don't know how much or anything if you mentioned, or there's other interesting material for, you know, you can fictionalize it or whatever, but you've got a good prototype for characters and that you've met and all. So, wow, good for you. So I know if Faith is still here, Faith married a gentleman who grew up, actually, or spent time in Shanghai.
Mm-hmm.
Faith, are you still with us? I think she had to. I'm not sure. Faith, can you unmute yourself if you have any?
Yes, I'm here.
There.
I put in the chat room that
Mhm.
you know, Doug was talking about education. The British system, the Oxford Cambridge system, was in all the Shanghai schools. And I happened to get a copy of someone's report card who was in 3rd grade, and it was on an 8.5 by 11 paper with like 30 different categories. I mean, these kids came out very well educated. They might have been hungry and only had one pair of shoes, you know, for several years, but their education was amazing. It just, thank goodness for that.
Yes.
In between bombs being thrown in by Japan, some of the schools that were built were from very high-end Iraqi people, Sassoon and Kaduri, and they made very strong buildings, and so the schools became the emergency place for people to go. Very smart and futuristic for these construction people to make something that would be bomb ready, you know, a haven for, you know, to be saved from the bombs. It was, these kids had certainly multitude of very different cultural things. They saw the Japanese killing the Chinese in front of them, you know, and rolling up babies on the sidewalk and putting them on the curb once a week. I mean, war is awful. And when you're very young, it's extremely impressionable, but you don't know that until you grow up and you come to another country. You think it's normal. You have nothing to reflect back to. You did because you were 9, but Robert was very, very much younger, from age 1 to, well, he was there until 1958 under the communists. So, you know, and he wrote, I was mesmerized by your family writing of, or your wife's writing of some pages. He wrote 27 pages before he died. and it's in his own handwriting, and it was very cathartic for him to write it. It took him 3 years to write 27 pages, but he described everything to a T. And you know, we'll put his pages in a book someday.
Very good.
Doug, we had a question. Janice wants to know about, have you written any poetry? Again, I felt your narrative writing was almost poetic.
Years ago, I wrote, I don't know, 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 poems. And like I said, a couple of them are in here. The writing.
Do you want to read any? Do you have any that you can read? Because again, we've got plenty of time. I was thinking of, in the past, we've also had meetings that focus on poetry, usually try to coincide it with the National Poetry Month, I think, which is in April.
Yeah,
so
April.
April,
Yeah.
So April or May afterwards. So we've got speakers lined up for April, May, but maybe in June or something, we should have another poetry focus on our poet.
Are there any other questions? I feel like I'm taking up everybody's time, and other people may want to.
No, your time is our time. We finished most of our business prior to it, so we've got plenty of time. But seriously, if you want to, do you have a poet or a poem or something that you could?
I could.
Yeah, why don't you? And if anyone else needs to, and
Jerry, I have a question from
Yes.
Faith. How are the monies coming in for membership, since we don't have any expenses?
Well, so far we're hanging in there. Everything is like, just frozen.
Waiting.
But we had enough to pay for our Zoom meetings. So we're doing fine so far, and then we'll have I'm sure when we get back, our regular meetings, which
March the 6th.
Who else is talking? Somebody is talking.
I'm muting her right now. Okay. Anyway, yes, we have enough to hang in there right now, since we don't have any expenses for having to rent projectors and everything.
Good.
And we've paid for our Zoom through October, but I'm thinking in person we'll start up next January to give this pandemic thing to work its course and get everyone vaccinated. Welcome, Jerry. Glad to see you again. You bounced in and out, so glad to see you join us. So
this is the first time it's ever worked.
Oh, I know. Last month we tried to get you on. I kept on admitting you, and you weren't admitted. So I don't know how much of you caught on Doug's presentation, but
None.
written. Okay.
Hi, Doug.
So do you guys know each other?
This is Jerry Hicks in the dark. I'm incognito.
Well, no, actually, yeah. Okay, we see you in the hat. At least you're on video, so we can see that. And yes, so both of you were with Surf Riders, right? Doug?
I never was, no.
Oh, you weren't in Surf Riders? Okay, but in the manuscriptors. Okay.
They only want real writers and surf writers.
Well, we're absorbed into one entity right now. So I really admired bringing on any of those who are from, within. I'm glad we're doing that. That's what I'm saying. I'm glad we're continuing both groups.
I think is Marilyn Litvak. Is she here online with us?
Yes. Marilyn.
Yeah, Doug, you are listed as a member of Surf Riders, by the way. I can show you the list, the membership list.
That is great. Yeah, I was finally able to join too. There were so many years I couldn't attend because of the conflicting meeting times. But Doug's also come on board to manuscriptors also. So
yeah,
dual.
Thanks to Van and you. That's
well, it's
worked out, right, Jeff?
Thank goodness for Doug, what you were saying, experiencing with mostly the electronics and everything going out recently there with the weather conditions in Texas. Could you imagine going through this pandemic without the technology that we have? we would have, well, I don't know how many actually would have even survived, because so much of knowing what's going on has been, and staying safe has been dependent on our communication systems. But to be so segregated from our family and loved ones, and I worry about the young children growing up and being maybe fearful to hug someone or
Don't worry about them.
okay.
They're not, trust me.
They are resilient, yeah.
They may be bouncing off the walls right now, but they're fine.
Actually, I feel sorry for their parents that are having to homeschool,
Right.
which that's, I can't imagine even trying to maintain, if you have a job online and you're trying to still see, stay at home. And anyway, we're in interesting times, very interesting times. Did you,
Yes.
Doug, did you find something to read from?
Yeah, I found I got the old book here. I could read a quick poem out of it if
Yes,
you like.
do. Again, we've got plenty of time, so we can even continue to visit and whatever else you want to add, and even more readings.
Okay, well, this is from the writing game. It's called Scotland from 30,000 feet. View of the
Titles are great.
window there from the upper deck. 6 miles below, suspended on the journey's moment, low mist breathes between blue-green fjord and dark Atlantic rock. White spray casts on the clay-colored shadow map. Smaller than scattered tide grains, Orkney shepherds guide their flocks. 6 miles below, suspended in the ocean's moment, gently lie soft Scottish hills, green-laden and thick, bisected now by the bright aerial scar. Ethereal vapor trail of travelers in time, the thin ghost wake of the great gray airship. 6 miles above, suspended in diaphanous flight, scythe wings turn and cut the fire of the sun. The crossing of the shapeless ocean sands has begun. Dancing cherub clouds swallow sea-washed scraps of stone. The faraway jet thunders on alone. We are going home, going home.
Beautiful.
That is gorgeous. I so admire you poets.
Lovely.
To be
Thank
so,
you.
again,
Any
you've got
chance for one more?
oh, yeah, and anything else that read from everything.
Do you have any recent ones?
No, I gave up on writing poetry. So the most recent thing again is the my little screenplay, which was recently.
Can you read part of that?
Of the screenplay?
Yes, read the first 5 pages.
The first 5 pages?
Yes. Can you read? First, let me see the first page.
Maybe if you share.
Okay, read at least the first 2 pages.
I don't know if you can share. Could Jerry and a couple of our actors
No,
read?
can't do. Oh, I see. Can't do the. Actually, just read the first 2 pages, Doug.
Okay.
And go ahead and when you say who's speaking, go ahead and mention the name of the character.
The first image is a Boeing 767 in KLM livery soars in front of the stars. We see that the aircraft is heading for a mountain of dark clouds illuminated by flashes of lightning. Then do you want me to read these as the little interior cut to? Oh, your voice is silent.
Yeah. No, don't read the stage directions. Just read the narrative and the dialogue.
Okay. So now we're inside the airplane. Mike Carter, early middle age, mildly handsome features, taps away at his laptop. In the dimly lit interior, we see the seat next to him is vacant. A glass of red wine is on his seat tray. The airplane begins bouncing in turbulence. The wine glass wobbles back and forth. Mike closes his laptop as the fastened seatbelt sign illuminates. There's a bad jolt, and the wine glass bounces off his tray. Mike grabs for it and misses. There are scattered cries of alarm from the passengers behind Mike every time the aircraft takes a bad bounce. Mike looks out the window. Bright streaks of lightning lash out, illuminating the clouds from within. The sight is both awesome and frightening. Then the pilot comes on. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. Before arriving in Dubai, we'll be making a brief stop here in Bahrain. Because of some unexpected turbulence as we descend through the rain clouds, we ask that you keep your seatbelts fastened. For those of you departing in Bahrain, we say thank you for flying KLM. The airplane bounces around for some time, and finally there's the reassuring squeak of tires hitting the runway. So now the pilot welcomes them, the passengers get off, and then the cleaning crew comes on, and then they come by Mike's seat. He's the sole passenger in business class. And one of the cleaning crew sees the glass of wine spilled on the floor. So he gestures to Mike to move. So Mike moves to the front of the airplane, where a square floor panel just after the cockpit has been lifted, and there's an access hole in the floor. And the Dutch pilot is talking to the mechanic whose head pops out of it's where the electronics are. They're under the floor. And so the pilot says to Mike, we have a little electronics problem, but don't worry, it's nothing serious. And the pilot says, well, we're glad we got in ahead of the storm. And then the mechanic pokes his head up and he says, it's just a loose sensor. You wouldn't have any duct tape, would you? And the pilot says, why would I have some duct tape? This is some from my notes from one of my trips, by the way. So Mike says, well, hey, I have some roll of bandage tape in my toiletries bag. Will that work? And the mechanic says, sure. So he gives him the tape and he fixes the plane. And the mechanic climbs out of the hole and they fix the plane. And then the pilot says, time to go again. So as Mike is settling into his seat, the flight attendant, one of the flight attendants comes and she says, excuse me, are you Mr. Carter? And he says, yes. And he says, why? And he says, the captain has invited you to ride in the cockpit. So Mike goes into the cockpit and the pilot says, thank you for settling that seat. And would you put the harness over your shoulders? Thank you, that's right. And they take off. And then the pilot turns to the co-pilot and says, well, this is Mike Carter, and he helped fix our airplane with his tape. And I invited him to ride in the cockpit as a way of saying thank you. And the co-pilot says, yeah, the Boeing 767, it's a great machine, tough as nails and a real moneymaker. We love them. And the pilot says, is this your first trip to Dubai? And Mike says, yes. And the pilot says, fascinating place, Dubai. And Mike says, why? And the pilot says, well, Dubai and the United Arab Emirates they're squeezed between your two big Islamic bullies, Saudi Arabia and Iran. But in Dubai, it's different. It's a place where you can have some fun. And the co-pilot chimes in, yeah, he says, remember, lots of British come down to Dubai for their holidays. And remember, there's two things British cannot do without on their holiday. Their ladies and their gin. And the pilot says, you can find both in Dubai without looking very hard. You'll meet some very interesting women in Dubai. And the co-pilot says, yeah, but be careful, or you may wake up next to a beautiful woman who will steal your watch and steal your wallet, or worse, steal your heart. And he laughs. And then the pilot says, just remember, hurricane. And Mike says, hurricane? And the pilot says, it's a Dubai nightclub. It's very famous. You'll meet some very interesting women there. Just tell any taxi driver, hurricane, he'll know. And Mike says, hurricane, thanks, I'll remember that. And the co-pilot goes, hurricane, yeah.
That's good.
That's a teaser. You've got us going.
So is that written only in screenplay format? Or?
Yeah, it's just in screenplay format, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, you may want to develop into a novel or whatever and then bounce back with the screenplays. That's how they're doing now too. So
and copyright it. Do you have it copyrighted?
Oh yeah, registered with the WGA.
Which has a 5-year registration, but also pretty much, it's floated around, it's been recognized in contests, so it's a good, if anyone wants to steal, especially whatever, they're going to steal stuff whether it's copyrighted or not.
Sure.
I mean, look at what Spielberg went through with what was the Amistad, the film, the slave ship that he was sued for or whatever, and I think they ruled in his favor, but anyway, apparently once you've written something, at least you acknowledge either ownership or originality.
So you're involved in writing screenplays?
Yes,
Mary,
yes.
or-
Yes, and again, folks, not next month, but the month after, I've invited the gentleman who has originated and conducts a meetup called the Screenwriting Tribe. So and people are welcome to join that. We workshop screenplays, and he's written this quite comprehensive text called Screenwriting Tribe. And he'll be here to promote that book. And we follow for formatting has also changed over the years, and it's a very distinct, as Jeff, as you know also, because I know Jeff writes screenplays as well. There are very certain things to adhere to within that have changed also, even. But I'm sure you would probably like to attend when John's here too. Yes.
John, is that the Jonathan, the boxer, the drummer?
No, I'm going to have him again, Janice, because he's come out, I think, with like 2 or 3 new books
Right.
since he spoke with us last.
Right.
He's
Well,
just
it was very interesting. I got it the same day I think I got Van's, and I said, well, that's interesting, and I think it's great that things are going well for him, and right. So I just if he's
I'll
on the
have him
queue.
back. Yes, he just signed for another 3 books with publishing companies, so he's really taking off too. So we can get him this. But also, this is what's so great about Zoom, Doug. Here you're with us from. It's almost like maybe we should have a I don't know, Zoom sessions continuing so we can bring in people that have fallen the wayside because they've upped and left us or whatever. But
Well, it's great, right, that we can see them, and then keeping in touch, absolutely.
yes.
And Doug, can you give us your email, because for some reason we don't have each other's emails.
I can.
Yeah, you
send
want
it
to put in the chat right now? Can you want to do
I
that?
don't think I can do that, but I can send it to you, Jerry, and then you can.
Okay. So as
then you
long,
can
okay, we
distribute
have
it.
you on recorded that you don't mind us, and Van can do that. Van can distribute your email.
Okay.
Van has the database for everyone.
Okay.
So
I'll do that.
So you hear that, Van? We have the authority now to go ahead and get
So
you.
that would be great, because Jerry, you're really good, and Van are really good about connecting, and Sharon and I certainly connect with one another. And I sent Van Pat's info. I mean, I don't know what you guys have. It's all sort of a secret society. I don't know. But
At one time, I think we need to. Well, actually, when people join, I think there still is the section you could check to whether or not you want your email, and that simple thing. If you check no, then we won't include it in maybe if we can get a roster going.
Well, I've
again.
checked mine, yes, and so have other people, and then they never hear back. So
okay,
you've already heard my complaints.
we'll try to do that, because I think I know, because when I first joined Manuscriptors 20 odd years ago, we did have a printed roster that we could actually, contact people. This before
Well, not that I'm asking for a printed, but I'm saying for people who are willing to have theirs out there.
Right.
It would be great, because, I personally like to thank the people that Van publishes. I mean, I think it's a shame if we can't say, great, thank you so much, personally.
Right. We'll look into doing that. Absolutely.
Right now, with the Zoom and everything, we have to pretty much stick to emails, and the email mailing list I have is very fluid. Anybody who wants to join in it and have us send us our notices is welcome to do so, whether they're members or not. All we ask is they're interested in the art of writing.
Yeah,
So,
is there someone you can mute? Because we're hearing, I think, somebody else, Jerry. You're right. Thank you, Van.
I don't see on my who's talking. So
anyway, yeah, if any of your friends want to join in our little group meetings, let them know, and they can send me their email address, and I'll send them the link up to the Zoom. But that's right now, that's the way we keep in touch. And a roster would be, non-productive right now. Um, the problem, of course, is if we did a roster, we would have to make sure that everybody in it gave us their permission to put their private
Right, well, several
information.
people who were complaining have passed on, so I don't think you're gonna have that resistance that you had in the past, but
Well, we occasionally do, and there are people on our original list who have marked down specifically they do not want their phone number or their
well,
email.
that's probably 5 out of 40, so I hope that
Yeah,
that can be
but
straightened away.
those are the ones who have caused us problems in the past. So we have to make sure that everybody is
I don't
accountable.
know who's talking, but I can't hear you very well.
Anyway, so we'll keep on top of it, but right now, Zoom.
And thank goodness for Zoom. Thank goodness we do have Zoom. And yes, we might shoot out maybe possibly an email saying we want to get a database for those that wouldn't mind having theirs publicized. Let us know if you do not want to. And that way, I think that would cover us if
Right, so
whoever.
what you're saying is that it's open to anybody who would like to be a member,
Yeah.
and that you would like to protect people's privacy,
Yes.
but there are other people who would like to be able to
Right.
thank people when they have something published, and even people who write books, and even in the anthology, library anthology, maybe out of the 50 people who published, there were only 2 or 3 who listed their emails. So there's no way for us to contact them and give that feedback.
Right. And as writers, we should be, if we do have our works out there, we should be willing at least to have get feedback from, we shouldn't be writing for just ourselves.
Well, I always BCC blind copy emails when I send stuff out for that reason. However, anybody who wants to get in contact with anybody else or send them a message asking them to contact them can always do it through me or Jerry.
Oh,
So
good, thank you.
that's always an open possibility.
Right.
I forget your Hotmail. Hotmail.
Right.
My computer wants to put you in AOL, so Hotmail.
I'm gonna stop the recording now. We can continue to. Doug, was there anything else that you would like to say, or?
No, I'm done. I've talked more than my share.
I am so impressed about how different genres and how productive you've been with your writing, and how you've incorporated your adventurous life into your writing. So good for you. So keep on writing, and we're so happy to have you as part now of the Southwest Manuscripters, as well of course, your continued involvement with the Surf Riders, even long distance. But thank you so much, and good luck, and I hope that's the last and only cold spell you have there in Texas for the rest of the, however.
I never want to go through that again.
Never want to go through that again. Well,
Yes,
we're glad that if actually this would not have been able to take place if you were still involved in that, huh? If you didn't even have electricity or power or whatever. So
we had candlelight in the fireplace.
Unbelievable. And hopefully good.
Can you share, Doug, how you chose your house, or did you have any idea that you needed to choose a house with certain features?
Well, we looked around. Well, because I was retiring, we wanted someplace that was affordable on a slightly smaller fixed income, and we wanted a nice location. We wanted a safe location. We wanted a location that was close to Target and major medical center. And so we looked around Central we took a trip up to Central California, and sometimes you get a good feeling, you don't get a good feeling. So it looked kind of dull in some of the places we went to. Then we went over to Florida a couple of times because everybody says, oh, retire in Florida. But we're not golf people, and there's questions on, a lot of new developments, questions on the water supply, and a lot of people there were golfers. We're not golfers. So in the end, we didn't decide on Florida, and my wife, Winnie, did a lot of research going to these various sites on where to live and what are the best places to live. And she came across Sugar Land, 2 words, which is always within the top 10 lists of various places where they say the best place to live. And so I think we flew out 4 times, found a real estate agent, and went around, looked at a lot of houses, and finally found, our current house. It's in a very nice neighborhood. There's a community pool a block away. It's 3,000 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 3 bath, big yard, $300,000. It'd be $1 million in LA. And
So is it a community? Is it, a gated community or something, or?
no, there are gated communities. Sugar Land, like I say, Sugar Land is roughly the same size as Torrance and roughly the same demographic. It's, a nice middle-class neighborhood, 15 miles from the downtown city center of Houston, but it's a separate city, like Torrance is a separate city. And but Sugar Land itself is composed of numerous developments and little neighborhoods. They're like little neighborhoods. We live in the neighborhood called Glen Laurel, and right next to us is Sugar Lakes, and then there's Sugar Mill, and then there's Lake Oaks, and there's these little defined neighborhoods. Most of them have a certain type of wall around it, a certain type of landscaping around it, and they have a gate where you come in. This is not a gated neighborhood, but there is like an entrance where it's marked Glen Laurel, where you turn in from the main street to come into the Glen Laurel neighborhood of Sugar Land.
There's a film called Sugar Land. I don't know if it's Goldie Hawn or whatever, but I'm not sure how that would. But Janice also had mentioned in the chat about how did you choose a home to withstand those weather conditions? Well, the thing is with Texas, they're not built to.
They're not built to withstand it. No, they run
So
a lot
unusual.
of our water pipes that run through the ceiling are insulated, but a lot of the homes here, the pipes in the ceiling are not insulated. Where the water comes in from the street and then it goes up through the ceiling down into the bathrooms, and 10 degrees for 20 hours, cold soak, and they're just weren't designed for that kind of cold. And they froze and they broke.
Wow.
Wow. Well, again, Doug, thank you so much. We so appreciate it. I'm going to stop the recording now, but we're still going to hang on for those that want to continue to visit. Thank you, Doug. We so appreciate it. Look forward to having you.
My pleasure.
Again.
Thank you very much.
And again, next month, we're going to have a panel of authors with Mo, and the month after that, a screenwriting session.
Yes.
Thank you, Doug.
Vote for Doug.
Vote for Doug.
And if everybody who wants to look at his books and things, if you look down below his bio on the Zoom mailing I sent out, down below his bio is a couple of links to his Amazon and to his personal website. So you can check that, and that'll connect you with all of his materials.
That's great. And any chance for you had so much information. I think we asked for, can you read anything from your wife's writing or from one of your other books about the life of whatever it was?
I don't have anything now, and I feel like I've taken enough of your time.
Well, we've had plenty.
You want a break?
Well, I'm going to sign off now. Again, thank you so much, Doug. So others stick around, we'll visit. But we really appreciate it. Stay warm, stay dry, and everything else there in Texas land.
Thank you.
Wow.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.